Eddie Adams won a Pulitzer for the famous Saigon Execution picture where the general is executing a Viet Cong. Eddie didn't like that picture. Loan, the police chief, in essence, he just took a pistol out of his belt and walked up to him and bang, shot him just like that. Eddie felt this picture didn't tell the whole story. Loan's aide had been assassinated. The aide's wife had been assassinated, and 4 of their children had been assassinated by a Viet Cong assassination squad. And this guy in the picture was a captain of an assassination squad. And he was in every way a spy. He wore civilian clothes. He was not a military. So Eddie felt that Loan got a bum rap.
Eddie worked for the AP for a number of years. I think he went to the AP in the early 60s. And I don't think he ever set out to be a war photographer. Eddie grew up in New Kensington, Pennsylvania, which is about half an hour outside of Pittsburgh. He was working for the newspaper when he was in high school. And then he went to the Marines when he was 17 years old. The Marines went to Vietnam in 1965. And that's Eddie followed the Marines over there. You know, the guys trusted him. He was one of them. He was a Marine. Being a Marine really informed the rest of his life. Well, Eddie passed away in 2004, and he had never gone through his work himself. And so when he passed away, there was all this body of work, and the first chunk that I thought I would work on is the Vietnam work. And so the idea was to do a book. And so I worked with Hal Buell, who was his former boss at the AP, and these pictures come from the book.
Photography, journalistic photography, was on the edge of a change. It was becoming much more reportorial and not so titillating, but more informative. And Eddie just fit that. Which pictures do I find the most revealing of the war? One is a picture shot from inside of a helicopter looking out, and a woman is reaching up appealing to be taken aboard the helicopter, and there was absolutely no room on the helicopter. She had her wounded husband with her, and Eddie made the picture, and the helicopter took off and left her behind, and that really affected Eddie. When you know the story, it's a woman begging to be freed from whatever was going to happen next. And then there's another similar picture where in the foreground there's a Vietnamese woman carrying her child and her GIs running this way. There's a firefight going on. And in both cases, what I liked about the pictures was that it showed how close the war was to the civilian population of Vietnam and the people.
There's another story that came later that he wanted to be known for, that he was actually more proud of, and that was the pictures he did on the boat people.
He was very favorable towards the boat people picture, not because of the photography, but because the pictures had an impact on a political situation which involved the opening up the gates to Vietnamese immigration. And it was one of the contributing factors that finally increased the number of Vietnamese who could immigrate to the U.S. In fact, Eddie resented being called a combat photographer or a war photographer because his work was not just Vietnam. That's 2 years of a 50-year career. He did all other kinds of photography.